Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The disciplinary hearing for 6 Metropolitan Police officers who are facing gross misconduct charges over the 2010 restraint death of Olucheni Lewis will be held behind closed doors. Only the verdict will be made public. An inquest jury found the 23-year-old had been subject to unnecessary, unreasonable and excessive force, which had contributed to the student's death. Here's our senior Home Affairs correspondent, Simon Israel.
It's just a day off 7 years since Olucheni Lewis died. He was admitted to a mental hospital in South London. The IT university graduate became agitated on the ward. Police were called, and after 2 prolonged periods of restraint, he died. That was on September the 3rd, 2010, and since then, no one has been held to account.
What are the bad days like?
The bad days can be bad, not wanting to get out of bed. Why should you carry on? But you know you have to carry on. We have to come to a conclusion. Not a conclusion just for ourselves, but I would not like to see other families to suffer the way we have suffered.
After an inquest in May found police had used unnecessary, unreasonable and excessive force on the 23-year-old, the family have pressed for a disciplinary hearing in public. 6 officers are facing gross misconduct charges. The tribunal starts in 9 days' time. But against the family's wishes, the Independent Police Complaints Commission has decided the proceedings will take place behind closed doors. In a letter to the family's lawyer, the IPCC Commissioner Cindy Butts stated,
"Having weighed up the representations made to me and having due regard to the guidance on this issue, I have determined that the hearing should take place in private, save for the panel's decision."
Yet again, for Olucheni's parents, what they wanted is being denied.
I feel victimised. Our whole family feels victimised.
But you've done nothing wrong.
No, but that's it. That's it.
But we've been paying for it for the last 7 years for what I don't know.
This is such a disturbing case that has been subjected to appalling delay, and it is simply unacceptable that it is going to be held in private, and this doesn't serve the family's interests, let alone the important public interest in this case.
The IPCC told us tonight there is a legal presumption that this hearing should be held in private, as it predates new laws requiring the vast majority of gross misconduct hearings to be held in public. According to the IPCC Commissioner, the officers are not accused of willful mistreatment of Mr. Lewis, but of a series of very serious failures in the context of guidance and training. The family will be able to attend the proceedings, but the media will not.
Simon Israel. Well, joining me from his constituency in South London is Steve Reed, the Lewis family MP. Steve Reed, thanks for joining us. First of all, your reaction to the fact that although misconduct hearings are being held, they will be held in private.
Well, I think one of the problems is if you shroud these kind of hearings in secrecy, you're not only denying justice potentially to families like the Lewis family, but you're preventing the system from openly learning from what's gone wrong so that we can prevent it from happening again in the future. And one of the problems around all of the inquiries into the use of physical restraint is the system is just not open and transparent. So we've been seeing deaths like the death of Sheni Lewis going on for over 30 years now, and nothing has prevented that happening. There have been 10 verdicts of unlawful killing since 1990, but not a single successful prosecution for the people that were responsible for that. If we don't open up the system, we're going to keep denying people justice, and we're not going to learn.
On this specific case, though, the Met Police would say this happened 7 years ago. It's been gone over extensively in an inquest.
It took 7 years for the family to get even the small amount of justice that comes from a coroner's verdict. It shouldn't take 7 years to get even that form of justice, and still nobody has been held to account for the death of Shenny Lewis, a young man in his 20s, otherwise in perfectly good health. One of the things that needs to happen is every time there is a death resulting from the use of physical restraint against mental health patients, it should automatically trigger an independent inquiry with free legal advice and support to the victim's family, so that justice can happen as quickly as possible, but importantly so that the system can learn. We can't just keep on letting people die in these circumstances and then wash our hands of it.
Well, an inquest into a report into police custody deaths was commissioned by Theresa May while she was Home Secretary. It was supposed to be published in 2015. It still hasn't been. How important is it to get it now?
Well, it's critical. I mean, it was supposed to have been published in the summer of last year. Most recently, we were told it was going to be published in July. It was then due out this month in September. We've just heard it's been delayed again. Now, Amber Rudd needs to get a grip of this. The government just can't sit on a report because they find the findings inconvenient. That report needs to be published, and we need to look at how we then change the law to protect other families and people like Shenny Lewis from the terrible fate that happened to him.
I mean, the Prime Minister has given her own backing to a number of these issues, as well as that report into police custody deaths. She's also committed to ending racial inequality. Are you confident the government is acting?
Well, the government's been talking. I've raised this directly with Theresa May myself, and the Conservative election manifesto promised legislation to tackle this kind of problem and the unconscious bias that lies behind it. But when we had the Queen's speech, which lays out the legislative programme for the coming session, not a mention of any of this. So I'm bringing forward a private member's bill on the 3rd of November, and I'm inviting the government to back that, because if they won't act, then we need to act to get the changes in the law that will protect families like the Lewis family and people like Shenny Lewis in future.
OK, we'll stand by for that then. Steve Reed, thank you very much.
I've been